it's really important to me. I love the harp, I love music, and I just think even if the gig doesn't feel like it's where you want to be, or if it's
Yeah.
not the most dazzling, wowing gig in the world, I think it's just really important to create beautiful things and do your absolute best, and you never know.
Hi, Glenda.
Hi there.
It's so lovely to meet you on Zoom. I wish it
Mm,
could have been in person, but maybe one day we will meet in person.
yeah,
Yeah,
maybe. But in the meantime, Zoom's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
yeah, it is. No, it's great. But your harp is there with you, and I'm so happy that
Yes,
you did
yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah.
It's always there. It's got to be in the background, hasn't it? It's so beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, the harp is a big instrument. And do you
Mm.
take the harp with you everywhere?
Yeah, I do. So unfortunately, the harp, whilst being big, it's not really like a piano or something like that where they usually have it
No.
there. So part of my life as a professional harpist is packing it up, putting it in the car, unpacking it, putting it back in. So it happens a lot, but you get used to it. It's part of the job.
Mm.
So
But
yeah,
is it easy? Is it easy to carry? I mean, and you don't carry it, you push it.
push it exactly. So I've got a lovely specialist harp trolley that it wheels onto. It's not so bad as long as it's on the flat. If someone has stairs, that's never very fun if you have to carry it upstairs. But other than that, it's usually
Mm.
okay on a trolley, in a lift. That's all fine.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
assume if it's a part of, you must have been doing it for so many years that you're so used to it now.
Yeah, exactly. You often end up with people offering to help, which is always so lovely. But actually, it's usually easier if I just do it by myself because I'm used to it. I'm used to how it works, and
Yeah.
um, when I'm at home, I always load it in myself at my end, so it's easier to do that by myself for the most part. Harps are funny instruments, and they're quite oddly balanced. So when someone grabs
Oh,
the other end, they can it
yeah,
can
of
tip
course.
quite easily. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think now that you must be, your eyes must always look out for a lift when you're in the building, with or
Always,
without the harp.
always. Always, yeah. It's one of my first questions when someone asks to work with me. I just say, is there a lift? How big is it? Because some lifts, particularly in London, there are these teeny
Oh
tiny
yeah.
old old lifts and they don't always work so well. So if someone says to me there's a lovely big lift in a building, that's like heaven. That's what every harpist wants to every harpist wants to hear that. Yeah.
It's these things, it's these behind the scene things that we really don't always think about.
Yeah.
Because if you're not dealing with it every day, then you see the harpist on stage with the harp, and but you never think, okay, how did that get there, or how does she have her everyday life with the harp? But now, so tell me, how did it start for you? I mean, what was the inspiration to start playing the harp?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question because I have what I like to think is quite a magical story about how I
Mm.
came to the harp. In that I knew since I was tiny that I wanted to play it. I'm not sure where I first saw it. I don't have a specific memory of that, but
Mm.
one of my sisters, my older sister's friend, she played the harp, so maybe that was a bit of an influence. But asked my parents, and it was a ridiculous instrument. Really, it's really big. It's not a cheap instrument to get into. So that was a no go for me. And I learned piano first and then violin subsequently after that. Never really thought I'd be a harpist, but when I was 10, I was playing violin in a church, and this elderly lady came up to me. She was 91 at the time, and she said, I'm a harp teacher. I think you're a harpist. Can I teach you? And that was that. From then on, my parents literally couldn't say no. She was the most lovely soul. Dorothy Pettit, her name was, and she carried on teaching right up until she was almost 100, and even still carried on playing until right until the end of her life. She died when she was 104. So,
But wait a
really
minute.
incredible lady.
Yeah, but wait a minute. This story is amazing. But did this woman know that you wanted to play the harp?
No, I don't think so. She'd just somehow in her, she said she just sensed that I would be a good harpist. And she
Wow.
always said later on that she never had any idea that I would become a professional. She just thought that I would take to it really well and it would be something that I would enjoy. So a really fortuitous moment. And if it wasn't for that moment, I probably wouldn't be playing the harp now. If it wasn't for her, I certainly wouldn't be playing the harp because
Yeah.
she really, really helped me out with an instrument getting started and even loaned my parents some money to buy my first pedal harp, not this one. So yeah, a really incredible moment for that. And I'm really, really grateful for it.
Well, for some reason, all the harpists that I've spoken to had these interesting stories, really, and not even the same type of story, but very interesting how they came to play the harp. It must be a magical instrument,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, it
Mm.
really is. I can't think of a better job. And I think with all the harpists having different stories, it's not necessarily one of those instruments that they offer you at school, unless you're in Wales. In
Exactly.
Wales, they do that
Yeah.
quite a lot. But in school, you learn if you're lucky to have a music program at school. We actually didn't. But they usually offer piano, violin,
Yeah.
flute, all these things. So if you end up on the harp, you've probably taken a little bit of a maybe a wiggly route to get there, not the standard one. But it's nice. It means everyone has their own different
Yeah.
path, and it's really
And
lovely to hear.
and it's, the thing is also, you can get the harp and that's all fine and well, but there's not always a teacher around. To find a
Yeah,
harp teacher, it's not like, I think piano teachers and violin teachers are more available in towns, or in cities, but in small towns, it's really, I think it's also that to take into consideration.
yeah, and that's a really, really big point, particularly about the harp. I think it's becoming more and more widespread. I think, which is absolutely amazing. But when I was learning, I started with my first teacher, who was quite close by. But then, as we progressed, and she retired for the fourth time. We ended up having to travel quite far. I think it was an hour and a half each way to my next harp teacher, which 3 hours travel for one harp lesson on a school night after you've done a whole day of school is quite a lot. And when I teach as well, and it was really important to me to make sure that harpists, particularly where I grew up in a really rural area, had access to the harp. So I actually, even pre-pandemic, was doing quite a lot of online lessons with some aspiring harpists in my hometown, just because there was a bit of a void of access to harps and harpists there. And that's been really lovely. And then obviously since the pandemic, it's become the norm that lots of people
Oh
have
yeah.
online lessons anyway.
Mhm.
But that's a great tool because suddenly people who didn't have a harp teacher close by can pick one off the internet and
Exactly.
there we
Yeah.
go. And it works really well. Yeah.
Well done to your parents for that commitment as well, because I mean, I'm a mom and I know, how it is when you have children and you have to take them to all their activities, and if it's driving you this distance to play the harp, then but you must have had the a real passion for it, for them to see it, and to want to help you with that.
Yeah, definitely. My parents were a massive, massive support to my musical career. And actually, I have three siblings who were all musical as well. None of them became professional musicians, but I have really vivid memories. We had a old VW van, and we'd all go around our music lessons with our dinner in a packed dinner to go, and we'd go to one music lesson and we'd do our homework in the van and then we'd just switch around.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I don't know how they did it, coordinating it all. I think they were coordinating something like 12 music lessons and probably about 6 orchestras between us all. But it was fun and we made it work. But definitely without my parents, definitely wouldn't be here. That was
Well, I
a
think,
really
yeah,
amazing support that they gave me.
I hear
Yeah.
that a lot from musicians, that they said that they thank their parents, because I think parents do play a big role
Yeah.
in either motivating or just giving those opportunities, to be able to do that. But now, the harp that you had when you were 10, was that
Hmm.
get that in a smaller size then for you?
Yes, yeah. So I started on what's called the lever harp. Um, the best way I describe it is it looks a little bit like the harp on the Guinness logo. It's kind of a little bit
Oh, okay.
smaller.
Yeah.
It's got a fewer strings, no pedals. The concert harp has pedals at the bottom as well.
Mm.
Um, and that's what I started on. I still play the harp that I started on now. It's a
Really?
beautiful instrument, its own right, and used for Celtic music, folk music, that kind of thing. It's got a lovely, bright sound most of the time. But then after that, because of its size and because it doesn't have the pedals, which allows for more access to more notes, basically, you can't really play it in orchestra. It doesn't carry. So
Oh,
after about 4 or 5 years of playing the lever harp, I then switched to the pedal harp, so that I could explore a few more opportunities, play all the really big, exciting harp repertoire that's out there, and play an orchestra. But that's quite a common path, I think, for a lot of
mm,
harpists, that they start on a small lever harp and transition.
mm.
Not everyone does. Some people start straight from pedal harp. My own harp teacher, I think she did that. She'd never played the small harp straight
Really?
onto the big one. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think I'm quite a small person. I think me at 10 years old would have struggled
Oh, okay.
struggled with a big harp.
But now, Glenda, so then you went to a music college, or where did you get your further education?
Yeah, so I was really, really lucky to go to a music school for sixth form. So that's when
What
I'm
is it?
16 years old. Usually in the UK, you go to a university level about 18. But I went to a school called Chewton School of Music in Manchester, where actually I was a roommate with one of the other musicians that you've interviewed, Rebecca. That's where we met. We were roommates
Oh,
at boarding
yeah, with
school.
the organist, the girly
Yeah,
organist.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
organist.
I
Yeah,
see.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we both went there when we were 16 and 17 through to 18. That was an amazing experience. When I went there, I wasn't 100% sure that I wanted to be a musician, and was kind of keeping a
Mm.
medical career on the sidelines as well. So a lot was going
Really?
on at that
Mm.
time. But around about 17, 18, I just decided that actually music was really for me. It was something that really touched my soul. And then I studied at Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance, which is in Greenwich in London, and that's just
Oh,
beautiful
mm.
there.
Mm.
I had the same harp teacher, Gabriella Delalia. She's an incredible international harp superstar. She was with me both at Cheetham's in Manchester and then at Trinity in London. So I had 6 really amazing years with her, and owe her most of my harp talent and harp prowess all comes from her wisdom and guidance there. Really amazing.
It's all this is also something I hear a lot, and that is the admiration for the teachers, for your teachers that guide you, motivate you. And I think over the lockdown period, I've also heard how many teachers motivated their students and helped them through this time. But I want to ask so this is very interesting that you're saying that you had a medical career also in mind. Because I actually spoke to a conductor in America who studied medicine, and in his final year, he made that switch to become a conductor. And I find this very interesting, this connection of the interest for science and music as well,
Yeah, I think It's quite a strong one, and I'm really not sure why. Science and music and maths and music seems to be a very
Yeah.
um, common area. I don't particularly know why. I know that I think my harp teacher also had a big interest in physics before she became a harpist. So
Really?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a common one. I don't have much insight into that. I guess in music, you're often, particularly classical music, you're thinking about a lot of things, analyzing how things are traveling. I don't know if that's something that kind of clicks into that side of the analytical mind. My harp teacher always would talk about mimicking the physics of nature in your playing. So when you're thinking about slowing down, don't just slow down anyhow you like. Think about a ball rolling to a stop and try and mimic that force of physics within your music and see what you see around you in the world, bringing into your music. I don't know if that's the link between it, but that
Yeah.
connection always feels very strong to me. Um, don't have more insights why, but it's a really, really interesting observation, and maybe someone should do
Well,
some research into it more. Yeah.
yeah, but this is really why I'm sort of I have this wish that could be that in schools that art, all forms of art are taught alongside math, and science, because I think they are very connected. And even if it's just in the language, even if it's just to understand the different disciplines, through studying the different disciplines, then how amazing is that? So during your training, of course, you had to have this you're training because you want to be a professional musician. What was your idea then to be do you want it to be part of an orchestra, because harp is not I assume not all orchestras use harpists.
Yeah, that's very true. So, unlike a violin, you'll always see a violin in an orchestra. Harps aren't always there. So sometimes orchestras will have full-time harp positions, but um, the harpist won't be used all the time. Sometimes they don't have a harpist at all affiliated with the orchestra, and they'll get someone in every time. Obviously, they have regular freelancers that they'll bring in, but some don't have a permanent position um, for harpists. I really enjoyed solo performance and also small chamber groups. I played quite a lot in flute and harp duo, and then flute, harp, and viola
Oh, okay.
during my training. So I think maybe around 3 years into my musical training, I was thinking that would be the path that I would take. But it's kind of evolved over the years, and I think as I studied, I was exploring more and more avenues and listening to lots of different music outside of the traditional classical that you might imagine a full-time harpist um, would listen to, and that actually took me on several different paths. At the moment, I'm going down a lot of them and seeing what sticks. I always think at the beginning of your career, you should explore as many options as possible and see what happens. So at the moment, I'm doing a real mixed bag of lots of things, which is amazing. I'm doing quite a lot of pop stuff, which I really, really love. I think the harp has been used in some really amazing pop songs over the last few years, and it's really interesting to do that and explore that avenue. I've done some recording, um, some orchestral work, some weddings, all sorts of things going on there. So it can be a real mixed bag of things that you do. And I think actually I'm really enjoying where I'm at with having a exciting, varied freelance career where you're doing lots of things at once. If you'd asked me that 6 years ago, 10 years ago even,
Really?
that might not be what I had in mind, but actually
Yeah.
it's been really, really lovely. And I think when I look at the most successful musicians, actually a lot of them aren't just doing one thing only.
No.
very blinkered. They've got a really rich portfolio of different things to do and teaching, and that's really exciting that you can have this really varied life where you're crossing over lots of different paths and meeting lots of different people. And yeah, it's wonderful for me.
Well, I spoke to a cellist just the other day from New York, and he said the same thing, that he said that he does different things and he actually plays the cello like a guitar, but he's doing different genres as well. And he said that it's wonderful that musicians do that. And I think so too, because you have to, I think what I've realized now after speaking to many young musicians is, your qualification or after you've studied is no guarantee that you'll have a career. It's you who have to now go and find out what it is that you want, and what opportunities you're going to use.
Yeah, definitely. And there's no guidebook for that necessarily. So yeah, I think you just have to be very open to what comes. And when I first graduated, my biggest rule was to just 100% give my best and create beautiful music, no matter where I was. So if someone gave me a gig playing 3 hours in a hotel foyer, I would play my heart out. And I met so many amazing, interesting people there. And actually, when I was studying at sixth form, my director of music said, I once played a concert and there were like 4 people turned up. One of them ended up being one of the most influential people and opened so many doors to me. And I think it's really important to me. I love the harp, I love music. And I just think, even if the gig doesn't feel like it's where you want to be, or if it's not the most dazzling, wowing gig in the world, I think it's just really important to create beautiful things and do your absolute best. And you never know where those things lead. And it's really, really exciting to do that. But always creating music from the heart is my absolute number one thing to try and do.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I think also playing different genres, of course, gets you to play for different audiences and then connecting with different people. So that must be wonderful.
Yeah, really, really wonderful. I try and do as much as possible, and I'm always really open to it. I love just listening. Listening is one of my big strengths. I think it's always been since I was tiny, and I have this thing where I just put the radio on when I'm driving, and I'll never switch over. I'll listen to something, and even if I think, oh, I really hate this song, I'll start listening more and thinking, well, there's going to be something in here that you can latch onto. And actually, when you start listening to all the layers of different genres, you realize, oh, that was so interesting. Even if you didn't love it as a whole, you can latch onto all these different little bits. And I think whenever I'm listening to a new genre, I try and go in with that frame of mind of what can I find about this that I really do love. And then suddenly it starts kind of opening up new doors for me. So I've played all sorts of things. I obviously play classical, I do pop. I really love exploring music from different cultures. So I delved into some Mexican harp music and explored Paraguayan harp techniques. And I've also really, really, really enjoyed diving into some Syrian music. There's a player called Maya Youssef who kind of plays the Syrian harp. She creates some really, really wonderful things. And just hearing what she does on her instrument and thinking, oh, can I do that on mine? How does that work? What sounds do we have that are common? What sounds do we have that are really different? And what could this harp do instead of that? That's so exciting to me to kind of delve into and get to the core and see if the cool things are the same on our instruments or if there's something else to offer. I really, really love that about all different genres.
Yeah, well, you seem to have this freedom in you that you feel you can explore all these things. But I wonder if there is under musicians, and you trained at a college where there are people, all the students who are going to be professional musicians, and of course, I'm sure you all aspire to. Maybe play in an orchestra as well, and so on. But is there some sort of snobbishness in classical music to say that, okay, so I'm not playing pure classical music, so for that reason I can't be called a classical musician?
I'm smiling. I shouldn't smile because I think, unfortunately, I think there still is a little bit, not everywhere, but if I said I hadn't encountered that completely, I would definitely not be being truthful there. I think there can be a little bit of snobbery still. And in some cases, there are people I know who are, if I don't get a position in an orchestra, I won't play again because it's not worth it. It's an orchestra or nothing for me. Or if this doesn't happen, then that's it. If you don't follow this path, it's not pure classical music. And I think, whilst that is still the case, some places, I think it is shifting quite a lot, which I'm really thankful for. I think that people realize that actually they're more interlinked than you would think. There are things that you learn in classical music you can take and learn in pop, and vice versa. There are things that you hear and things aren't quite so clear cut. So I would like to think and like to hope that it's on a good trajectory where actually people are more open to these things and perhaps less judgmental about taking a non-conventional path. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. But it does take quite a lot of courage, I think, to step out and do
Yeah.
different things. There are always people who don't like it. Particularly, there's a harpist that I really love called Emily Hopkins who does harp and electronics, which are absolutely amazing. And she gets comments on YouTube, people saying, "How dare you defile the sound of the
Really?
harp? The harp should only be beautiful. Why on earth would you do this?" And that's even people outside of the classical music scene. So imagine what people who have had their hearts set on harp and orchestra are like. But I think there are people like that who are being so brave and stepping out, and I try to do that too. And I think we're creating a new future of music
Yeah.
where classical music is fused with pop music, where it's fused with R&B, fused with jazz. We've got all these different things at our fingertips. So why not? Why put ourselves in a box? Um, the classical musicians of their time obviously didn't, because when Mozart's contemporaries were playing Mozart, they were playing the music of the day, the really exciting
Yeah.
stuff at the forefront. It's only now that we look back and think of classical music as being historic and being hundreds of years old. So I think the more that people grasp onto doing what they can that feels relevant to them today, the better for everyone, really.
Yeah, well, I think it's always brave if you do something that's different, something that other people say, well, it can't be done, and you can do it. And actually, I spoke to I think it was a music professor who said that it was only a few years ago where it was really sort of this divide between musicians who played in an orchestra and musicians who were freelance. That the freelancers had sort of a bad rep, and that changed completely. That changed, and so all this will possibly change. And I wonder if the pandemic also had something to do with that. That people were at home and thinking about the instrument, thinking about the music, and just wanting to really create music.
Yeah, I think that probably does have something to do with it. And I think in a way, the pandemic kind of took away all of our structures, didn't it? It
Oh,
took away it, whether you were a musician who had a full-time tenure in an orchestra or whether you're just a music graduate starting out. Suddenly we were all at home with our instruments, without so much to do, without someone telling us where to be and what we should play and what to do. And suddenly everyone kind of came back to um, just them and the instrument in the purest form. And I think that probably did change a lot of people's um, thinking about their instruments. I know musicians who actually decided they wanted to walk away from being a musician, and it took the pandemic and coming out of almost, I don't want to call it the rat race, but we all have the just doing one thing and then the next and then the next, don't we? So I know musicians who have walked away. I know musicians who have stepped into a different genre completely. And I know musicians who had the pandemic and realised what they were doing before was absolutely what they loved and have gone back into it with new zeal. But I do think the pandemic has forever changed all of us,
yeah.
for better, for worse. And I think it probably has had a big part to play in musicians exploring things that they might not have done before because they've had the space to do that. And there's not been one right way to do something. I have certainly felt a lot of freedom that I did a series of online concerts and we picked a
Really?
theme. So we had around the world or movies, and I was just learning lovely film scores one week and then um, diving into music from India the next week. And it was really, really liberating just to
Amazing.
be
Oh,
able to play those things and actually not feel like I have to learn that thing because I've got that concert coming up where they're paying me to play that, and I need to do this thing because that's coming up. And yeah, no, it was really, really lovely. The lovelier moment of being a musician in the pandemic. Obviously, there were
yeah.
definitely some downsides as well, but I like to focus on the highlights.
Yeah, no, but actually, this is what a lot of musicians said, is that they felt
Mm,
they had the freedom. And, I spoke to a pianist in New York who said that, he played repertoire that he hasn't played for years, and he had the
mm.
freedom to do that because it wasn't something that he had to study for a recording or a performance or so on. So I think, this is something that I hear quite a lot. But now, tell me, Glenda, what would your advice be to a 10-year-old Glenda when you started playing the harp? If you can go
My
back.
my advice to a 10-year-old Glenda, I think to enjoy
Mm,
enjoy being a musician and be unashamed about it. It sounds really silly, but where I grew up, very few people were musicians. We didn't have a music program, particularly at school. We did have a little band in high school for a little while, but by the time I left my high school, they'd actually gotten rid of music A level, which is 16 to 18. I had to self study for my A level. They didn't
wow.
offer it anymore. Um, I don't even know if they did music GCSE at that point when I left. So it was really, really not a musical environment. I have really vivid memories of being teased on the bus going to orchestra and things like that. And it was really hard to be a musician, and people just did not get it at all. Um, and I remember just thinking, like, I'm getting up, I'm practicing, I'm not going to so and so's party because I've got orchestra, or I'm not going to this because I've got a competition. And at times it felt really, really difficult. I think a lot of musicians can relate to that because it's something that you have to start working hard at very early on. I think a lot of musicians do. So I think for my 10-year-old self, I'd say that you absolutely love music, so keep doing it. It doesn't matter that it's not cool or that no one else is doing it. Fast forward um, a couple of decades and you'll be living your best life, really, really enjoying it, doing something that you're passionate about every day. and that's something that you're really lucky to have. So I think
Wow,
that's
this is amazing advice. Because, yeah, that is true. That when we're that age, we don't see, and also the enjoying it. I think it's always this. Also working towards something, you sometimes don't enjoy the moment where you are. So yeah, no, this is wonderful advice. But now, what are your wishes for the future?
So my wishes for the future, I really, really hope, first and foremost, that I never lose passion for the harp. That's my biggest hope for everything. I really, really love the instrument. I think it's such a beautiful instrument. There are so many new things that you can find all the time, and I hope I never lose that passion. Practically, I think I would really, really like to step into doing maybe more recording work, more collaboration work with some bigger artists, maybe getting the harp even more mainstream, because at the moment it still feels quite a niche instrument. You don't see it everywhere. Most people probably have never seen a harp in their lives. Lots of people don't know what it is. People often ask me, is that a cello?
Really?
Is that, yeah, also, no, often people ask and I say, no, it's a harp, and they say, a harp? What's a harp? I've had that conversation probably 50 times. So I would really love to be an advocate for the harp in different spaces. I'd love to work with some big artists. It would be amazing to play for someone like Beyonce. That would be incredible. But yeah, I think first and foremost, keep the passion. That's the most important thing to me. And I think when you're doing that and you continually pursue that, I think even if it takes some time, I think you're going to always end up in a really beautiful place, hopefully. That's what I like to think anyway. If you keep the passion, work hard and pursue it,
well, you've got such lovely energy, and I'm sure Beyonce should contact you.
Yeah, if she's watching this, she can give me a call, definitely. I'll be on the next one. I'm forever in my car singing along to her, so that would be a good one.
Well, many people who made wishes on my channel, their wishes came true. So, never know. You'll have to let me know what happened.
Yeah, if that happens, we can do a reconnect and do another one of these.
No, but I think it's wonderful, and your you have the right energy. I think you will still develop and explore, and this is what I love, what you are talking about. Like you going and thinking about different genres and playing different things and experiment, and that's, I think, this is the future is yours. So what can you still achieve? What because you've done already so much. But you still have to do a shout out, please. Can you do a shout out for your favorite restaurant or coffee shop?
I absolutely can. I don't even have to think about that one. Okay. My favorite restaurant, probably of all time, is Unity Diner in London. It's an incredible non-profit restaurant that's also linked with an animal sanctuary. They do completely vegan, plant-based food. It is incredible, amazing food. Whether you eat meat, whether you don't, the food is just amazing. The vibe is amazing. I took my meat-loving family there, and they were literally blown away that you could create such beautiful things without having any meat. And to quote my boyfriend, you go in and it just feels like a really cool, normal restaurant. It just has a lovely vibe to it. Everyone's amazing. They do absolutely incredible things with food. I don't know how they do it. I've tried to replicate it at home 100 times. It doesn't work. So if you're ever in London, you absolutely have to go Unity Diner. It's just incredible. Really, really lovely.
My son is in London. I'm going to call him just now.
Yeah, it's amazing. They do
Where is this restaurant in London?
They're in Aldgate East, so quite central, a little bit east. And it's very accessible, really, really quick to get there, not far from the tube station. But their big one is toe fish and chips. So fish and chips is obviously the British classic, but the way they do it is just incredible. I've never seen anything like it.
I will also go when I go to Vienna. I'll go and have yeah. But it was so lovely to talk to you, Glenda. I hope you come to Vienna one day.
Yeah, that would be really, really lovely. Obviously, loads of musical history in Vienna as well, isn't there? So really, really, really beautiful.
But Glenda, it was so lovely to talk to you, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you. So lovely to be on here, and thank you. Wishing you all the best as well.
Thank you very much. Have a lovely afternoon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.